Come out! I want all demons out of her spine. Get out!
Have you ever watched something online or on TV and wondered, was that real?
Get out in the name of Jesus Christ, get out!
There's probably no show that makes people ask that question more than Nathan Fielder's Nathan For You. Nathan For You is a parody reality television show where Fielder gives ridiculous advice to small business owners. The show's humor comes from his guests reacting to the bizarre and uncomfortable circumstances he creates.
The plan? Ship smoke detectors tax-free by rebranding them as musical instruments.
You know some degree of the show has to be set up. Nathan's ideas are intentionally ridiculous, and the guests know they're on a show. Yet their reactions feel so authentic that you can't help but wonder, could that have really happened?
And I don't know if you're really trying to do this just for the show, but I'd like you to get off my desk and I'm going to ask you to leave the office.
If you search for Nathan Fielder online, the question of whether he's acting or not is one of the top results, and the mystery of how real the show is debated relentlessly online. Even in the show's finale, Fielder notes the blurred line between reality and fiction.
And the more we kept shooting things, the harder it was to tell where the show ended and life began.
And Nathan For You isn't the only show that has this effect. People wonder the same thing about reality stars, internet celebrities, and even pro wrestlers. It's actually a pretty common question, especially in a social media influenced world where people's daily lives are put on display and monetized. So it's no surprise that people are fascinated with characters like Nathan. With that in mind, let's take a look at Nathan For You and other reality blurring entertainment to really understand the question. Is Nathan Fielder acting?
This is Nathan For You.
From the very start of the show, we get a sense of who Nathan is. He's overly confident, combative, and socially awkward.
If you want to hang out sometime time outside, I don't know. It's fine.
This scene with the yogurt shop manager introduces us to the show's central theme, Nathan's inability to connect with others. It's something that comes up again and again throughout the show.
You know what you are? You remind me of the Wizard of Loneliness.
From the beginning, his extreme social awkwardness seems too intense to be real. In an interview with the AV Club, Nathan admitted to exaggerating his character on the show for the sake of humor. He says that, quote, there's some of me in there, but he's also, quote, taking a lot of vulnerabilities and insecurities that I had when I was younger, and I'm exaggerating them for the sake of comedy. What we don't know is how much of that social awkwardness is genuine Nathan and how much of it comes from his on-screen persona. In a sense, he's no different from other reality television hosts, like Gordon Ramsay, who have created character versions of themselves that they play on TV. In Ramsay's case, you can really see how much the character changes depending on the circumstance. In the American version of Kitchen Nightmares, he's completely over the top.
Look at the mess of this place! It's ridiculous!
Whereas in the British version, he's still his bombastic self, but much more subdued.
That was upsetting. Because that was dire.
Like Ramsay, you get a range of Nathan's persona throughout the show. In some moments of Nathan For You, you can see he's playing it up for the sake of humor.
They did all the hard work. They did deserve the applause. They really did a good job.
If you're lucky, he could do some hard work on you.
But in others, like the Ghost Realtor Exorcism, he seems genuinely shocked and concerned for her safety.
Are you okay,
Yeah.
Sue?
The obvious reason for comparing Nathan For You with reality television is that the show itself is a direct parody of business improvement reality shows like Kitchen Nightmares and Undercover Boss. And if it wasn't for the dominance of reality television in today's entertainment, neither Nathan For You nor Nathan's character would exist. It's easy to overlook just how influential reality television has been on the entertainment industry, from the way people perceive celebrities to its impact on characters in scripted media. But perhaps the most obvious change was the complete transformation of channels like MTV and the History Channel. Both were once known for thoughtful and original programming, but now almost exclusively show reality television. This dramatic change can be traced back to one MTV show from the early 90s, The Real World. Ironically, the creators of The Real World originally set out to write a scripted drama in the style of Beverly Hills 90210 and Melrose Place to capitalize on the allure of the glamorous Hollywood lifestyle. They ultimately scrapped the idea after realizing that writing a script and casting real actors would be too expensive. Instead, they devised a way to capture that same glamorized lifestyle but on a much lower budget. Inspired by the 1973 PBS drama An American Family, they cast 7 real 20-somethings, put them in a duplex in Soho, and filmed them 24/7. The producers told the cast to act as naturally as possible, with the goal of editing all all that footage down into a coherent story of their everyday lives.
Find out what happens.
What? When people stop being polite. Could you get the phone?
And start getting real.
The real world.
The show worked. It was a cheap way to give people the same kick they would have gotten from a scripted drama. It spawned countless other shows looking to generate entertainment while keeping costs low, like Big Brother and Survivor, and led to MTV cutting their music videos and the History Channel ending its big-budget documentaries. The reality television genre continues to expand today, adding countless subgenres from dating shows to court shows to business improvement. These shows all work the same way: film lots of unscripted footage and use fast-paced editing to construct a story in post-production. Nathan For You parodies these shows by subverting many of their common tropes. Reality television shows a stylized portrayal of real events. Shows like The Bachelor use rapid editing, voiceover, and intense music cues to steer the narrative of the show.
But I'm gonna give you these to hold on to. That's kind of dominatrix, wait.
But Nathan For You clues you into the facade. If you compare Nathan For You to conventional reality television shows, you'll notice that Nathan For You has much fewer cuts because it keeps in the imperfections.
So exciting.
Yeah, it is, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
By getting rid of the editing techniques that hide the messier truth, Nathan For You not only satirizes the over-dramatized editing style of reality TV, but it exposes the constant performance of the on-screen characters. Because Nathan is so awkward, we know the only reason that the contestant tries to kiss him is to perform for the cameras. But while Nathan For You uses editing to expose the performances by people on the show, you never see Nathan himself completely break character. In fact, by stripping down the artificial editing and showing him interacting in real time with people confused by his behavior, his on-screen performance seems that much more real. The question of the extent of Nathan's performativity remains a mystery. Reality television made the concept of performing for the camera so ubiquitous that it worked its way into scripted media too. Compare how similar kinds of characters treat the camera before and after the start of reality television. The mockumentary This Is Spinal Tap is a scripted comedy that follows a fictional rock band, and it came out before reality television. You'll notice that the characters have the same personality on and off stage, and it feels like we're seeing their authentic selves, not some fake performance for the camera. The Office, on the other hand, does the exact opposite. David Brent clearly notices the camera and performs differently because the camera is there. That kind of character only resonates in a modern post-reality television world, where the audience understands how the presence of a camera influences a person's behavior. Brent's obsession with performing for an audience gives us insight into his character and shows his desperate need to be liked. He wants to make himself appear more interesting than he really is.
I mean, just be yourself. Yeah. You know, a bit more relaxed. Something like that.
So even before Nathan For You clued in on the artificiality of reality television, shows like The Office showed characters performing only because the camera is there. And it's not just mockumentaries. The show Fleabag also centers on a character who, like David Brent, is trapped in a performance for the camera. She uses the audience to tell jokes and lighten the mood, and we become her sort of confidant. But when we see her at her most vulnerable, she's uncomfortable with our presence, and the camera backs off.
I'm just trying to get to know you.
Well, I don't want that.
The audience is both a refuge and a crutch, a way to distract herself from her misery and avoid confronting her trauma. Both shows were influenced by reality television because they show characters presenting the audience with an idealized version of themselves instead of showing their true identities. But it's not just people on television that have to perform all the time. You do too.
So, and that's right, Dave. Yeah. Wow.
In 1956, Irving Goffman wrote a book called Presentation of the Self that gives insight into why reality television became so popular. He claims that all interactions are essentially tiny theatrical performances where we try to shape the impressions others have of us through our appearance, speech, and manner. Essentially, in our public lives, we play the character we hope others see us as. But to Goffman, we don't always get to pick which role we play. Sometimes, social norms require us to play particular roles even though we might not do so naturally, like a waitress who must remain calm and courteous to a rude patron.
The last 4 times we've come here, the food was awful.
Well, I apologize for the food the last few times.
Our true selves only emerge backstage when we are alone or with people we trust. There, we drop all performance and become our authentic self.
I just don't understand what would compel a person to be such a bitch to a total stranger.
Countless character-driven stories show the conflict between the onstage self and the backstage self. A character like Chiron in Moonlight acts tough when playing the role of the drug dealer, but reveals his vulnerable side when in private with Kevin. Goffman's theory explains why we enjoy this kind of narrative storytelling. These stories let us see a person's backstage in a way we never would have otherwise. The appeal of reality television, then, is that we not only get to see a person's backstage, but it's the backstage of an actual real person, not a character in a fictional story. The theory also explains why the contestants in The Hunk acted the way they did. The women weren't showing their backstage selves, but rather they were playing a particular role that they had seen in other reality television shows. They knew they had to act flirty and over the top to make it into the cut. Like a waitress playing out her social role, so too do reality television stars and online influencers play the role of the friend, or the romantic interest, or the social outcast, because those are the social norms they implicitly agreed to perform. But for the reality television shows that Nathan For You parodies, this performance is hidden from view. The shows instead present themselves as a glimpse into the backstage life of the people on it. Many of their titles imply that we're getting the real, personal experience of glitzy socialites, like with The Real World, The Real Housewives, and Keeping Up with the Kardashians. By surveilling the cast of The Real World 24/7, the show appears to break through people's onstage performances and expose their authentic selves. Of course, it turns out reality TV isn't so authentic after all. The Real World Chicago was shot in 2001 and happened to be filming during 9/11. The show dealt with the events head-on, showing reactions from the cast watching the event unfold on live TV. It's a compelling scene that still circulates on the internet to this day, because it captures the shock people felt watching 9/11 unfold in an authentic manner. But in reality, the scene was staged. The cast later admitted they were at Wrigley Field for a photo shoot when they learned of the attacks. Only afterwards did they shoot a scene of their supposed initial reaction. There are numerous examples of the fabrication behind reality television. The Extreme Makeover Home Edition renovations are apparently not really built to last. Bachelor relationships often break down off camera, and the Kardashians tend to keep their family drama, like Kim and Kanye's divorce, private until it airs on their show. And it turns out that Nathan For You similarly stages events on the show. The actress from the Hero episode said producers told her she was on an MTV dating show, and she knew that the person she was on a date with was in disguise. And in an AMA on Reddit, Nathan said he made sure he could get out of the handcuffs in the Claw of Shame episode. But despite some deception on the show, some events are not only completely real, but they actually go on to have a real-world impact. Fielder's clothing line Summit Ice became a real successful brand, and some of his guests ended up embracing his silly ideas and using them on their own, like the Ghost Realtor. Similarly, Nathan's personality extends beyond the show itself. He keeps up his deadpan, awkward persona in moments where celebrities normally seem more genuine.
We lose every year at Saturday Night Live, so I didn't prepare anything.
He even did an entire episode about faking a story for a talk show, a type of show that presents itself as authentic, but like many things on TV, is just a performance.
But what you could never guess is that this seemingly effortless appearance was one of the most calculated events in human history.
Nathan is far from the only actor staying in a character all the time. In professional wrestling, this behavior is encoded in a law that governs the entire industry, kayfabe. Kayfabe is the act of staying in character and maintaining a suspension of disbelief, pretending that all the fights, feuds, and other narrative plot lines are real. It's an open secret that pro wrestling is staged and match outcomes are pre-written. But everyone from the wrestlers to the industry professionals must maintain the ruse. Like the reality star, pro wrestlers don't get to have a backstage. They perform all the time. Nowadays, kayfabe is more of a wink and a nod rather than a governing rule. Most fans understand that Vince McMahon didn't actually father an illegitimate son who just so happens to be the leprechaun wrestler Hornswoggle. But back in the day, people did debate about how real pro wrestling was.
It's still real to me, damn it!
Just like how the internet now debates whether or not Nathan Fielder is acting. Nathan is in a version of kayfabe as well. His awkward persona from Nathan For You shows up everywhere, even on his personal YouTube channel. His videos basically resemble something a socially unaware person would post unironically, down to the low-quality webcam.
Shakira, Shakira.
If it's all a bit, it's something he's maintained constantly, just like the kayfabe maintained by pro wrestlers. It even extends to his Instagram posts like this one, where he's supposedly out on the town with friends, but they're all just out of frame laughing too. The fact that Nathan's Instagram posts are in character really adds to the mystery of whether or not he's acting. Social media, just like reality TV, is supposed to be a window into someone's backstage persona. So even though this Instagram post seems like a continuation of his ongoing joke on Nathan For You that he has no friends, it still feels plausible that the person is real. His behavior online feels a lot like other social media influencers who also have dramatic, over-the-top personas for the camera, and market their posts as a peek into their backstage. Really, every YouTuber who actually shows their face offers the same thing the real world did: authenticity. Except this time, the production costs are even cheaper, and the actors don't go home when the season ends. They sometimes vlog every day and document their entire lives. For them, the performance extends even further into the backstage. Their life is content, and the line between backstage and onstage becomes even more blurred. But this behavior isn't just reserved for actors, wrestlers, or influencers. Now, with the mass availability of social media, everyone has the ability to star in their own little reality show. Just like the cast of The Real World, people on social media present themselves to an audience on a daily basis. They keep up the kayfabe by performing idealized versions of themselves, and it gets harder and harder to tell what's authentic and what's not. The film 8th Grade explores this phenomenon and how social media has impacted teenagers.
Pressures I had as a D-list celebrity had been democratized to an entire generation. Now everyone feels like they can have their own brand, and everyone feels like they have to present themselves.
Like a reality television character or someone in kayfabe, Kayla puts on an appearance, and the film captures the flaws in that constructed persona. Similar to Nathan For You's editing, 8th Grade avoids cutting to keep in the most authentic moments, unlike most online vlogs.
If you see a lot of vlogs, the uploaded video will be jump cuts, and they'll cut out all this sort of white noise that is the most interesting thing, which does actually give you insight into what they're actually doing.
I like him. He's a really nice person, but yeah, I love him so.
While 8th Grade confronts the challenge of living in a constant social media performance head-on, plenty of other stories deal with that same anxiety. The character Fleabag reflects the anxiety that comes with constantly performing and not having a distinction between the onstage self and the backstage self. The show regularly shows her inability to know what is just a performance and what is her true self.
Is that a joke? I don't know.
Maybe part of Fleabag's massive success is its ability to touch on this uniquely modern, social media-influenced, post-reality television anxiety. That very same anxiety is at the center of Nathan For You's series finale. In a surprising turn, the finale departs from the show's usual format and instead follows Bill Heath, an actor who appeared on the show, and his quest to find a long-lost love.
Is that a regret of yours?
I should have married her.
But as the episode progresses, it becomes unclear how much of the relationship is real and how much is an exaggeration made up by Bill for the sake of the cameras.
Well, it seems like a personal moment for you.
No, bring the cameras. I like all the PR.
And Nathan himself has his own identity crisis. After hiring an escort to help Bill work on his interpersonal skills, Nathan finds that he enjoys her company and continues to hire her throughout his stay in Little Rock. It's the culmination of a series-long character arc. The Wizard of Loneliness finds someone to connect with, but the catch is that it's only for the show. Just like Fleabag, the show is a crutch for Nathan. In it, he can create a fantasy world where he's a confident host, and can hire people to interact with him because he has a television show. Macy is just another character in that performance, playing the role of an interested and caring companion. In the end, both Bill and Nathan live in a fantasy world where the characters they try to play don't reflect who they truly are. And because of that crisis, neither can truly connect with others. That's what makes it a perfect story for the modern era. What Nathan, Fleabag, Kim Kardashian, you, and I all have in common is that we can get stuck in a constant performance, unable to discern what is our authentic self and what is a character.
Yeah.
Which brings us back to the original question. Is Nathan Fielder acting? In a direct sense, yes. He is playing a character who happens to be an exaggerated version of his younger self. But when placed within the context of a performative world, where reality TV and social media influencers dominate our concept of authenticity, it's clear that Nathan's character is no less real than other supposedly real people on TV. And that still doesn't tell the entire story, because sometimes a performative, exaggerated version of yourself can be more true to who you really are.
I would say Larry David is the guy you see on Curb Your Enthusiasm.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes, because that's who I aspire to be.
Aspire to be?
Yes. So everything else is an act.
And I do think the performed version of yourself is not necessarily false. Who you hope to be can be a more vulnerable truth than who you are afraid you may be.
By acknowledging that everyone is performing, from Bill Heath to the contestants on The Hunk to Nathan himself, Nathan For You ironically gives us something more authentic than the reality television shows that claim to sell authenticity. On this show, we watch people make conscious choices about how they want to present themselves on television and what character they want to play. In watching people make those choices, we get more insight into who that person is than we would ever get from 24 hours of camera surveillance. Nathan For You is so special because it exposes humanity's inherent desire to perform, to present a certain version of the self. Scripted media like Fleabag and 8th Grade follow characters who have to deal with that dilemma, but Nathan For You shows it in real life. The blurring of the line between acting and sincerity is exactly the point of the show. It's in the not knowing that we get the most authentic reactions, and it's in the not knowing that we catch a glimpse of ourselves. So, is Nathan Fielder acting? I think a much more interesting question is, when you're on a group call or posting on social media or even commenting on this video, are you?
This is Nathan For You.
I do have some extra thoughts about Nathan Fielder's performance that didn't make it onto YouTube, and I included those thoughts in an extended version of this video on Nebula. Nebula is a streaming service that supports exclusive ad-free videos from YouTube's top education creators, including some of my favorite film YouTubers like Patrick Willems, Michael Tucker, and Lindsay Ellis. If you liked this episode, the version on Nebula removes this ad entirely and replaces it with a discussion of one downside of Nathan's reality-bending acting. You can watch the extended video on Nebula thanks to a partnership with CuriosityStream, a subscription streaming service with thousands of documentaries and nonfiction titles, much like the History Channel and the Discovery Channel before reality television took over. In fact, the founder of CuriosityStream is also the founder of the Discovery Channel, so you get those same high-quality documentaries, like David Attenborough's Light on Earth, a fascinating exploration of how animals can produce light on their own. Because CuriosityStream wants to support educational content and educational creators, if you sign up for CuriosityStream with the link in the description, you get access to CuriosityStream and Nebula. For a limited time, CuriosityStream is offering 26% off their annual plan. That's less than $15 a year for both CuriosityStream and Nebula, which really is one of the best deals in online streaming. Clicking on that link in the description is a great way to support me and this channel, as well as educational content as a whole. Along with Nebula, my Patreon supporters also got the extended edition. A big thanks to them for helping out the channel. Thanks for watching.